Good morning everyone, Sigmoni here, and welcome to this brief review about Anime Studio Simulator, a visual novel created and published in 2016 by Visual Noveler, the creator of Ascendant Arts, another visual novel we already reviewed on this channel. In this game we follow a team of youngsters that, during the period before the start of their university year, decide to try and make an anime, having to face various problems and tribulations in order to create the best show they can. Now, as I said at the start, this is going to be relatively brief due to there not being much to talk about in many instances. For example, the story, while it had a somewhat interesting hook a la Shirobako, is pretty bland and does not get developed in a compelling way. Starting from the plot conveniences the game throws at you when assembling the cast of this game, and which could be considered laughable at best in some instances, the plot then tries to show the various tribulations the team has to go through, but doesn't do enough to make the player actually care about the events it is trying to showcase. For example, whenever the characters face a difficulty, it always gets resolved, in the end, in a relatively favorable way to the team, which already takes away from a lot of events when you notice the pattern. In general, however, the plot does not hold the player's attention for long, also because of the shallowness of the world, as this is not a deep game about how the anime industry works and the ins and outs of it, but more a superficial outlook regarding some specific aspects. However, this shallowness then reverberates onto other aspects of the plot, such as the events, which is one of the reasons why they end up not being compelling enough to pique the interest of the player. Yet, it doesn't stop there, because shallowness could be the single word that could sum up the entirety of this game, as multiple aspects of it reek of superficiality or of inexperience if we want to be more generous with our choice of words. This also extends to the writing and the dialogues, which are pretty bland and uninspired, though there is an attempt to make the team really feel like one, especially through the use of some events that try and test the unity of the group. However, the writing is unsuccessful in this mission, and this feeling never really becomes something tangible. Changing topic, the game offers 3 routes, though let me add some inverted commas to it. Basically, at the start of the game you are going to decide what genre of anime you are going to create, whether an harem, a mystery or an action one. And based on your choice, certain dialogues and images are going to change, but these instances are few and this feels more like a flavor choice rather than something that really changes anything at a story level. Also, the game offers various endings, some bad ones, which, however, are not that notable, as it is normally just a member quitting on the team or the anime not doing well enough. And then we have 4 good endings. The one where your anime gets mixed reviews, the one where you get good reviews, the one where you get excellent reviews, and the best one, where basically your anime becomes an instant classic. These are nothing extraordinary in terms of endings, it is literally your collaborators congratulating with the cast, and the characters deciding to work on a sequel, with the game concluding after
Yukari.
the character that started the events of the entire game talks about being able to realize their dream, but they are serviceable and conclude the game in a sufficient manner. Now, as there is not that much else to say about the plot, let's briefly talk about the characters, which are, unfortunately, not salvageable, due to them being very much underdeveloped and always feeling like puppets on the screen with which the puppet master that is the plot can play around without any worries. In general, all of them are flat and one-dimensional. For example,
Yukari.
the director and the one that ensembles this cast of one-note personalities has as her whole character the fact her dream was always to direct an anime, her being worried about anything that could happen to it, and her hate for paperwork. Mayumi, the composer, is a friend of
Yukari.
and really likes music, and not much else. And I could continue like this for all the characters, because from the first to the last they are all describable in a few words that perfectly encapsulate the few characteristics they have been gifted by the writers. Again, the shallowness of the plot also extends to its characters, which are also one of the reasons why the plot is generally uninteresting, because seeing cardboard figures interact with each other and face difficulties you already know are going to be resolved is not an entertaining scenario to the eyes of many. However, this does not stop here, because now we need to talk about the gameplay as, in the end, this game has simulator in its title, so there has to be one. Unfortunately, I think there is a problem with the game's title because, more than a simulator game, This feels like a managerial one, where we need to manage the various characters to create the best anime possible, but I also think this is just a technicality. Anyways, close this little tangent, the game is composed of 12 weeks. At the start of each week, we need to decide what to do in it, which consists in deciding what task each character is going to undertake, decide whether to pay and outsource some work, and whether to upgrade one of the characters so that it becomes more proficient at what it does. After you have decided that, the week is going to start and you are going to see a mixture of story events and random ones. Choices in the story events can influence the ending you are going to get, while the random events are going to give you a choice that may increase or decrease a specific character's stress or happiness meter, or alternatively, it may do the same with your funds. Every character has 3 stats, except for
Yukari,
which has 4. These are happiness, stress, and proficiency, plus management for
Yukari,
happiness and stress basically serve the same purpose. If happiness reaches 0 or stress arrives to the maximum, the character in question will quit the team and it will be game over. Proficiency, instead, tells you how good a character is at its job. The higher it is, the bigger the advancement you will get for your anime in the category in which the character is going to work. Management, instead, is a skill that only
Yukari,
has, and it deals with checks for marketing and management events, and, in general, it is required to get the best ending possible. Each character has a set of 3 possible actions that it can take each week, except for
Yukari,
that can make 4. These are to work on a specific aspect of the anime, with this being predetermined by the game, so you can choose the category they will work on, to increase their proficiency, or to relax. The first choice increases the advancement of the anime in that specific category, but it decreases happiness. The second one increases proficiency, but also increases stress. The third one decreases stress and increases happiness. Meanwhile,
Yukari,
has the same 3 choices, with the first one being one between increasing her management stats or the storyboard quality of the anime, but then it has a 4th one, which is to raise funds and whose result depends on her proficiency. This is the most useful thing she can do, as you will need money to upgrade the proficiency of the members of the cast, so to avoid wasting a week to do so, and also to outsource work, which is required for the best ending, as the characters alone will not be able to work on all the available categories, but some will appear more than others, creating this artificial imbalance that you need to take care of with outsourcing. The last thing we need to see is the anime itself. Now, the progress of it is divided in 3 categories, those being story, art, and music. Each of these is then divided into 3 subsections: plot, character development and storyboard for story, character design, background and animation for art, and voice acting, opening and ending, and soundtrack for music. The progress for each category is represented by 5 stars. Each time one of your characters works on a certain category, depending on its proficiency you are going to get alpha star, 1 star, or 1.5 stars of progress in it. If you instead outsource work, you're always going to obtain a star of progress. Now, this is the gameplay loop the game offers, and unfortunately, while I needed a bit of time to explain it, in reality there is not that much to do, as it reduces to trying to keep everyone happy while attempting to fill each category of the anime to the maximum. In the end, it is a pretty simple gameplay that bases itself on few mechanics. However, that will not be a problem in itself if the gameplay is of a good or, even simply, of a decent quality, but unfortunately this is not the case, as it ends up being frustrating mostly due to 3 things: the random events, the funds problem, and the best ending requirements. Now, the random events can make or break a run in some instances, mostly due to the fact that, unless you save scam or use a guide, you don't always know what will happen when you pick a choice, and, as many of these modify the stress and happiness of the characters, this can lead to an early game over. Also, you don't know how much they modify these stats, so you can end up starting a day with no stress at all, and arrive at the next week with the bar almost full through a combination of work, story events, and random happenings. This is not the biggest problem ever, as a bit of randomness can add that challenge that many can end up liking, but on your first runs they can be rather problematic and can lead to believe that the game is too much random or quite frustrating. However, if you don't dislike a bit of save scamming, know that if you save at the start of an event, you can reroll the subsequent ones, so if you want to gamify the game, you can. If this in the end is not that big of a problem, the funds one instead is. Basically, whenever you raise funds, there is a chance you get no money, it's as simple as that. I don't know whether this is a feature or a bug, but if you don't notice it, it basically means you have wasted a turn and lost precious resources to help you win the game. The way to counter this is to save before the choice and reload if you don't get the money, aka the solution is to save scam, but if this was intended, this is not a good mechanic, as it is essentially a coin toss to decide whether you should restart your run or not, which, again, can be frustrating, especially if you were doing well, because it is not your fault, but it is the game's one. The third problem instead is less of an issue and more of a puzzlement. Basically, the game does not give any information about what you need to do in order to get the best ending. Sure, understanding that you need full stars in all the animes categories is easy, but that is not the only thing you need to do to obtain that. In order to do so, you need to choose specific choices during the game, mostly related to always choosing the costlier option, have enough marketing, and basically have Akari's management skill up to approximately 80%. If you don't consult a guide, it can be pretty frustrating to get the best ending, also because the game is really strict about the requirements. You may have full stars in every category, have enough marketing, and have chosen every single required option to get the best ending, but if Akari's management skill is not high enough, you are not going to be able to get it. Because of this, obtaining the best ending ends up being pretty difficult, but this is only an artificial difficulty, as the only two things that make it hard are the time limit of 12 weeks, which already poses a challenge in itself, especially at the beginning when it comes to completing every single category, and the obscurity of the requirements due to them being never told to the player. Still, while the things I have said above can be considered frustrating for the majority of players, the artificial difficulty they introduce can actually be a plus for some, as, indeed, reaching the true ending is a complex journey that will require you either to be extremely lucky or to make multiple runs throughout it, which can increase this game's longevity depending on how much time you need to do that. Nevertheless, this whole gameplay loop remains a somewhat frustrating experience in its simplicity, which seems like an oxymoron to be fair, but it is indeed the sensation the game transmits in many instances. This was all for the gameplay, so now let's look at the last two aspects we need to consider, those being the art style and the soundtrack. Now, this game's art style is not the best, it's a pretty simple one after all, but it is still enjoyable. The various sprites are fine, probably the most mediocre aspect of it, while the backgrounds tried a bit with the rest of the art style, so I have to suppose they are copyright-free assets, which in any case look decently made. Also, the CGs are enjoyable, again, nothing too complex or peculiar in terms of the art style, but they do their job and are relatively nice to look at, so I can say they do what they needed to do in a decent manner. However, the GUI does not look good at all and feels a bit amateurish for its simplicity and bluntness. More could have been done under this aspect to valorize it. As for the music, it's pretty forgettable, there is not really much else I can say. Though there is a technical problem where, in some instances, the music does not start or does not loop, making the whole scene silent, which is an error I will trace back to inexperience, but it is still a bad look on the game and surely doesn't help the already mediocre soundtrack to be something more than that. As a last note, no voice acting is present. I needed 2 hours to finish my first run, and when I got the best ending, I clocked at around 3 hours and a half. As for replayability, well, you can replay the game as many times as you want, but if you want to get the best ending, unless you slavishly follow a detailed guide, you will need multiple runs to achieve it. Sure, each run is going to last less than your first one, but this still gives this game a nice replayability value for those that care about it. Anime Studio Simulator is a pretty mediocre game, all things considered. The narrative department is undercooked, plain, and not compelling enough to keep the player's attention, as also are the characters, which end up being forgettable in their one-dimensionality. The gameplay, in its simplicity, somewhat salvages the entire structure thanks to an artificial difficulty in getting the true ending that can make some satisfied, but that also can end up making the player feel frustrated. However, this, coupled with an overall decent art style, is not enough to make this game stand out in the sea of games that exist nowadays, and while the original premise was interesting, its development left a lot to be desired under many aspects. Yet, if you're looking for a management-like game that can be completed quickly and you like the premise, then this can still be a game that may interest you, though it may still be unable to provide a satisfying experience. Having said this is the end of the video. Thank you very much for arriving here. If you want to see more videos like this, you already know what to do. I don't think I need you to bore with something that you have probably heard thousands of times already. So thank you for watching, this was all from Sigma Oni, and I'll see you all in my next video.